So, you may be asking yourself, oh, another Dragon Age the Veilguard hate review. Why should I listen to this guy? And why the heck is he just now reviewing it when the game has been out since October of 2024? Almost a year to review a game is pretty crazy. Yeah, I get it. Almost a year to review a game is wild, but honestly, I was busy playing it. A lot. And I procrastinate, so sue me. And hey, I'm a professional voice actor and have a perspective that other reviewers just don't. So what you find in this review may just surprise you, so stick around. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a Dragon Age game that doesn't feel very Dragon Age-y, but holds its own as an action RPG, with likable characters, a deep lore library, a solid yet sometimes clunky combat system, and an evolving story where a few of your decisions do actually matter compared to what others have to say. Now, this final review isn't a good review by any means, because the person never actually played the game, but man, that's a creative use of dots. Gameplay and combat. So Bioware said the combat in Dragon Age the Veilguard was inspired by Mass Effect 3. And maybe that's true in spirit. Inspired is a broad term, right? But in practice, outside of telling your companions when to use their abilities, it doesn't feel all that close. The good news is, it develops its own rhythm and flow with its combat. The bad news, depending on your class, that rhythm can feel a little clunky. I love that word, clunky. That said, the team-up mechanic is a very cool highlight. One companion inflicts an affliction, like Weakened for example, and another detonates it for some pretty solid damage that creates an additional area of effect. Plus it typically freezes the enemy for a quick second or two. Just enough to heal. Chain that with AoE abilities from your allies or yourself, and you can absolutely shred some of the tougher multi-enemy encounters. During these set encounters, you'll see a wide variety of enemy types, which is actually pretty nice. There's like 9 or 10 of them. And the bosses are pretty unique. And guess what? There'll be dragons here. The only downside to some of the bosses are the repetitive nature of fight for the first stage, hit things that they run back to heal, then start stage 2 and repeat for stage 3. Or shoot the giant red orb diamond thingies to break the shield and hit them until you can't. Just some small missed opportunities that could have added some great depth to big encounters. Now, let's talk classes. The Mage. My main playthrough was a Canary from Mornwatch, who was a mage. They feel like a glass cannon, slow but powerful. My Orb and Dagger build smooth things out a lot to make it feel not so slow, but if you go Staff, it really only shines when you lean into what's called the Death Color subclass. The Staff otherwise is pretty powerful but super slow, kinda clunky with movement, and I find the other classes' Staff being strong, but they feel like they get less when you're maining the Staff, compared to the Death Collar, of course. I'll be honest, I kind of regretted my main playthrough after I trialed the other classes, with the exception of breaking boxes. That Staff really made exploration super easy for looting resources early on. Now, the Warrior. It's much more fluid. With the Warrior you have options for sword and shield and heavy weapon specialties. The sword and board feels almost like Captain America, with how snappy you are, especially if you've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals like I have. The heavy weapons are slower, but man, they hit hard. Very fun class to start with. The Rogue. This is where I regret not starting. You're zipping between enemies like Batman in the Arkham games, and man, the bow. Oh, the bow melts barriers, and headshots feel really, really good. So honestly, Rogue or Warrior are the best picks for a first run. And I would say do the Mage on your second because it's still fun, don't get me wrong. I just know I lost some of the joy comparatively to the late game Rogue and Warrior abilities. The skill trees for each class are expansive, with 3 subclasses per class for your Ruck. Combine that with companion synergy abilities that can boost with your relationship status with them, and even additional faction gear that you can level up with. And you've got a decent amount of depth in the combat. With your companions, there's a little mechanic called Hardened. It comes after making a difficult choice story-wise, but it's not a horrible condition to be honest. It affects the way they play, makes them more powerful with physical abilities, and blocks support abilities like healing. But I don't see a huge downside to it if you're using a different support character as your third person in your party, or don't use them in your main group. It can't be fixed unfortunately, even if you pursue a deeper relationship with that character, which is a wild miss in my opinion. Thankfully, it only can affect 2 characters, which you may or may not use in your party anyways. Regarding other conversations with NPCs, don't expect persuasion-heavy dialogue trees. Most conversations boil down to one shot at the right choice, otherwise you're in for a fight in most encounters where the choice to talk is available. Besides that, dialogue is pretty shallow even though there are quite a few options in some of the dialogue trees for companions, for example. Storytelling and world building. If you haven't played Dragon Age in years, like me, Veilguard does a fairly okay job at easing you back in. In character creation, you could even select choices that were defined from Dragon Age Inquisition. Unfortunately, they don't actually import your character from the previous game, which is a huge missed opportunity, since this is considered a direct sequel, and your Inquisitor is technically in the game. That being said, the Inquisitor's role is odd. For someone so important to the world, they feel like a glorified cameo, when arguably they should have been the main protagonist. If you want a good read, there's a really good piece on that from The Gamer, and I honestly agree. The story itself is hit and a little miss. Side quests flesh out your companions, but most boil down to follow companion, listen to person, fight 1 or 2 things, rinse and repeat, and weirdly enough, usually in 3s, because apparently everything in this game comes in 3s. The problem is, without these side quests, your companions feel very shallow. With them, you get pretty nice character reveals and depth. The biggest drawback is that the depth can be super informing on the story as a whole, and you can lose a chunk of needed backstory if you skip side quests or collection items, like Solas's regrets for example, which come later in the game. Not to spoil anything, but there's a literal little team meeting at the end of finding these things that discuss the why for the events leading into the game's plot, and it's stuck behind a side quest. It makes no sense otherwise why your rook would even be there. Otherwise, the world has an alive feeling in certain settings, like check out this dude sweeping. And the lore section and library is pretty expansive if you want to read, which, let's be honest, not many of you do. The choices you make in the world also have some repercussions, but they lack the weight compared to earlier games. You might see some echoes of your decisions later, but the stakes aren't near as impactful. That said, the endgame does ramp things up. The point of no return is very clear, thankfully, and character and faction choices you've made along the way do start to come to light in the finale. The themes of redemption and perseverance are cemented in the in-game content, and I do think this makes the game replayability enticing, especially with the class option and multiple companions available. Physical world and graphical performance. Alright, visually, the environments shine. They feel lush and detailed even though they are mostly linear in path. Character models, they feel a little too soft, which almost kind of pulls me out of the Dragon Age vibe, though I do think it's perfectly fine, especially if you treat this as its own RPG. That being said, this can't be a Dragon Age game without dragons, and by golly, there are a bunch of them, and they look wonderful, though their fights are fairly similar to each other. Big arena, multiple stages to hit at 1/3 health, and fly away. There's those 3s again. The characters themselves, well, let's just say they have some performance anxiety. All characters suck at skipping rocks. I can't understand that, and the fact that you can't swim in this game is kind of ridiculous. I mean, there's time-stopping magic, and I can't breathe underwater or learn how to freaking doggy paddle? Come on, man! On the technical side, the in-game scenes feel like they were rushed, or half-hearted, That could very well be due to EA pushing this to be released, the restarting of the entire game halfway through, or a mix of both based on some of the new knowledge we have from the creators, but who really knows? Voice acting and characters. Speaking of voice acting, the cast and characters are easily one of the game's strongest aspects. Rook, your player character. The cool thing with Rook is you have some voice options, and there's even a cool pitch shift fader to customize your Rook to your liking. I went with Alex Jordan's British male version, and he sold sarcasm and wit perfectly based on the strictly sarcastic run I went with, because that's what I do in these games, be sarcastic. Lace Harding. So for Harding, I feel like her writing is a little too modern at times for the setting. But Ali Harris does a wonderful job to not make it as noticeable as it could have been. Harding is a pretty unique dwarf, especially when you compare her to the other dwarves in the game. Nev Gallus. So in my main playthrough, I almost ruined the relationship with Nev after one of the few key choices in the story, and you could just feel her hurt in the performance. Jessica Clark killed that. When trying to warm back up to me through her companion quest, you could feel her open back up to Rook, and it even gave me an option to pursue a relationship with her. But alas, in the end, she found the arms of another companion after I friend-zoned the hell out of her. Rook ain't got time for that. He's gotta save the world, woman! Side note, her side quest line has the most underwhelming finale fight in the game by a mile. It's so freaking sad. Bellara Luther. If I butchered these last names, I'm so sorry. I didn't actually expect to put them in here, but it kind of felt right. So Bellara has the same modern feel issues as Harding does, especially at the beginning. But I feel it's kind of on purpose though, and it feels like an ADHD archetype, which is very cool to see represented in a game. Her story develops well, and it makes a good turn about halfway through. The big moments she has do fall a little flat in performance compared to other characters, but the small moments are so expertly crafted. I love them. They're so good. Lucanus Della Morte. Alright, Lucanus just channels an Ezio and Assassin's Creed energy. He balances suave and dark sides while really opening up at the end. His questline, without providing too many spoilers, is a very fun journey for balance from within. He also was into Nev, so I had to be a wingman for the winged assassin in my main playthrough. That's the main reason I didn't actually pursue her in that. Why am I such a good friend? Davrin, and his little buddy Asan. Alright, Davrin has this authoritative, new dad type softness that just really resonates with me. Especially because my wife and I are actually expecting our first kiddo at the recording of this video, so it's just perfect. Loved every second he was in my party, which was most of the time actually. Because who can say no to Asan just diving down and killing things? I love him, he's so cute. Tosh. Alright, here's the spot where everyone wants to jump in and probably in the comments and hate me. Okay, she gets a lot of hate, I get that. In my opinion, Tosh is hit with bad writing, and possibly a lack of direction more than anything and anyone else. I'm curious to know if Jen Meili's sessions were self-directed because many big moments kind of fall flat, and Tosh has some amazing moments of story that could lead to great character development. And sometimes just a self-directed session can't pull you into those moments as well as a director being there. Overall though, Tosh has a great concept, but many people say that the they-them storyline kind of feels forced. I think it feels forced only because the writing team brushed some very solid story opportunities to the side that could have made it feel more real. There's one side quest where Tosh notes about interactions with the Shadow Dragons, and them using non-binary terms, and Tosh asked what it meant. If we could have had that scene in Minrathous, it would have made the quote-unquote big reveal so much more meaningful, along with the story with her mother. Bad character writing and execution, but fantastic character concept. Imric Volcaren. Alright, Imric is just wonderfully executed. Go Nick Barain, man. Now, Imric's story felt almost like an unrelated DLC, as it wasn't really connected to anything else in the game. It was still cool seeing it for the first time, especially as my mage was a Morn Watcher too. I think any other faction background wouldn't have appreciated it unless they liked Imric as a main companion, or they loved the amazing character that is Manfred. I could go on and on about all the main characters and NPCs in this game too, and while the voice actors did a wonderful job, with what they were given of course, the script issues were noticeable at times, especially when, well, I'll let the scene kind of speak for itself.
That's what it sounded like.
So they were doing it.
The elven gods were free with their emotions. They felt things deeply. The way they express things, well, it feels romantic to us, but that wasn't really how it was. Back then, I mean.
Nah, they were doing it.
Oh, they were absolutely doing it.
The modern verbiage here just 100% breaks the high fantasy wall in almost an uncomfortable way. All I have to say is you can't outperform bad writing. But my god, these actors tried, and they almost did. I can't blame them, nor would I ever want to, as I loved what they brought to the characters in the game. Final thoughts. So, where does that leave Dragon Age the Veilguard? Flawed, yes. But fun? Absolutely. The combat can shine with the right build, the world is alive enough to pull you in, and the characters stick with you despite some missteps in the writing. It's worth at least one full playthrough. Maybe more if you want to experiment with choices or classes, or try what I call the Thanos run. Ignore every side quest, every fetch task, and just bulldoze through the main missions. It's a totally different experience, and it creates a totally different story too. It's not the Dragon Age we expected, but it's still worth playing. I would give Dragon Age the Veilguard a solid 7.5 out of 10. So, have you played Dragon Age the Veilguard? If not, why? After watching this, do you want to try it out? Let me know in the comments, and feel free to like and follow if you like reviews like this. No pressure though. See you in the next one. Bye!